The mining ship Prosperity moved slowly through the dark space between the rocks. Captain Deho stood at the control center watching the computer screens. His ship had been digging through this rocky area for 3 weeks now. They were looking for rare metals that Earth needed badly. The crew worked day and night. The big metal arms of the ship grabbed rocks and broke them apart. Inside some rocks they found iron and gold. Other rocks had nothing useful at all. But today felt different somehow. Deho was 45 years old and had spent most of his life in space. He knew when something was not right. The feeling in his stomach told him they were about to find something strange. Navigator Hyojin sat at her station checking the sensors. She was young but very smart. Her fingers moved quickly over the buttons as she watched for anything unusual. The screen in front of her showed all the rocks around them. Suddenly the screen began to flash red lights. Hyojin looked closer at the readings. Her eyes grew wide with surprise. "Captain," she called out, "I am seeing very strange energy coming from rock number 7739. This energy does not match anything we know about." Deho walked over to her station. He looked at the numbers on her screen. In all his years of mining, he had never seen readings like these. The energy patterns were too organized to be natural. They looked like they were made by someone. "Take us closer to that rock," he ordered. "Turn on all the sensors." The Prosperity changed direction and moved toward the strange rock. As they got closer, more crew members came to the control center. Chief Engineer Boram turned on the outside cameras. Communications Officer Subin checked the radio signals. Everyone wanted to see what they had found. The main viewing screen turned on and showed them the rock's surface. What they saw made everyone stop talking. This was not just a rock. Someone had built something huge inside it. The surface was covered with metal walls that stretched for many kilometers. Strange symbols were carved into these walls. The symbols glowed with a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. But the most shocking thing was the chains. Enormous chains came out of the metal structure and disappeared into the rock's center. Each chain link was bigger than a house. The chains were made of some black metal that seemed to eat the light around it. "Those chains," whispered Subin. "They go deep inside the rock." Deho felt cold fear run through his body. This was not a mining site. This was a prison. Someone had built this place to keep something locked away. "Captain," Hyojin said in a quiet voice, "the sensors are picking up life signs from inside the structure. Something is alive in there, something very big." Boram checked her engineering computers. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever is in there has been using power for a very long time, maybe hundreds of years. The crew stared at the ancient prison floating in space before them. The metal walls looked old but still strong. The glowing symbols seemed to tell a story, but none of them could read the alien writing. Deho made a difficult decision. "Prepare the shuttle. We need to get closer and see what we are dealing with." "Sir," said Hyojin, "should we call Earth first? This seems too important for just us to handle." "We are 3 months away from Earth," Deho replied. "By the time help arrives, this situation might change. We need to investigate now." Dr. Haywan joined them on the control deck. She was the ship's science officer and expert on alien artifacts. Her job was to study anything unusual they found during mining operations, but she had never expected to find something like this. "The construction is clearly not human," she said while studying the images. "Look at the way those symbols are arranged. They follow mathematical patterns that are different from any Earth culture." "How old do you think it is?" asked Deho. Dr. Haywan pointed to the metal walls. "See how the surface has been worn down by space dust and radiation? This structure has been here for at least 1,000 years. Maybe much longer." The ship's computer made a soft beeping sound. New information appeared on the screens. The sensors had found something else. "Captain," reported Hyojin, "the chains are not just holding something down. They are connected to a power system. Energy is flowing through them into the center of the rock." "What kind of energy?" asked Boram. "I do not know. It is unlike anything in our databases. But the power levels are enormous. Whatever this system is doing requires more energy than our entire ship uses in a year." Subin looked worried. "Sir, I think we should be very careful. If someone built a prison this big and used this much power to run it, whatever is inside must be extremely dangerous." Deho nodded, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. "That may be true, but we also need to consider that whoever built this prison is probably long gone. What happens if the prison fails and no one is here to deal with what comes out?" The thought made everyone uncomfortable. They were just a small mining crew. They were not prepared to handle dangerous alien prisoners, but they were also the only humans within light years of this place. "The chains," observed Dr. Haywan. "Look closely at them on the screen. Do you see those thin lines running along their surface?" Everyone looked where she was pointing. There were indeed small cracks visible on several of the chain links. The cracks were very thin, but they seemed to be getting bigger. "The prison is failing," Dr. Haywan said quietly. "These chains have been holding for centuries, but they are finally starting to break." The control room became very quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. They had found an ancient alien prison at the exact moment when it was beginning to fail. Whatever had been locked away for so long might soon be free. Daeho looked at his crew. These were good people who had signed up for a simple mining mission. None of them had expected to face this kind of responsibility, but here they were, possibly the only thing standing between an unknown alien threat and the rest of humanity. "We cannot just leave," he said finally. "We need to find out what is down there and decide what to do about it. Prepare the shuttle and the investigation team. We are going inside." As the crew began to prepare for their descent into the alien structure, none of them realized they were about to meet a being who had been waiting alone in the darkness for 1,000 years, a being who had given up everything to protect the galaxy from a threat too terrible to imagine. Dr. Haywan led her team through the metal door that opened into the alien structure. The air inside was warm and thick. Their equipment told them it was safe to breathe, but everything felt strange and different. Behind her walked Minho, the team's language expert. His job was to study alien writing and try to understand what it meant. Next came Boram, who would examine the technology they found. Team medic Yunji followed close behind, watching her medical scanner for any signs of danger. The hallways inside the structure were enormous. The ceiling was so high above them that their lights could not reach it. The walls were covered with symbols and pictures that seemed to move in the light from their equipment. "These symbols are not just decoration," Minho said as he ran his hand along the wall. "They tell a story. Each section connects to the next one like chapters in a book." The team walked deeper into the structure. The temperature kept getting warmer. The walls themselves seemed to glow with their own light. A deep sound echoed through the corridors like the breathing of some giant creature. "The life signs are getting much stronger," reported Yunji as she checked her scanner. "Whatever lives here is definitely awake and very large." They walked for what felt like hours through the winding passages. The symbols on the walls became more complex as they went deeper. Some sections showed pictures of stars and planets. Others showed creatures that looked like nothing they had ever seen before. Finally, they reached a massive doorway. It was 20 meters tall and made of the same black metal as the chains. Strange lights moved across its surface in patterns that hurt their eyes to watch. "Directly, this is it," said Dr. Haywan. "According to our maps, this door leads to the central chamber." The door opened by itself as they approached. Beyond it lay a space so huge that their lights could not show them the far walls. They walked forward carefully onto a platform that extended into the darkness. What they saw in the center of the chamber took their breath away. A creature hung suspended in the air by enormous chains. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing any of them had ever seen. The being was clearly some kind of dragon, but unlike anything from Earth stories. Its body was long and snake-like but covered in scales that shined with colors that seemed to change as they watched. 4 massive wings were folded against its sides. Each wing was thin enough to see through and traced with lines of silver light. The dragon's head was both reptile-like and something completely different. Its eyes were closed, but even sleeping it radiated intelligence and power. When the light hit its scales, they reflected colors that human eyes were not meant to see. But the creature was clearly dying. The chains that held it were not just keeping it prisoner. They were slowly draining away its life energy. Thousands of years of this treatment had made the once mighty dragon weak and thin. Its scales had lost much of their shine, and its breathing was slow and labored. "The writing on the walls," Minho said suddenly. His voice was excited but also worried. "I am starting to understand what it says. This creature is not a prisoner. It is a guardian." Dr. Haywan turned to look at him. Her training as a scientist was fighting with her growing fear of what they had found. "Guardian of what?" "The entire galaxy," Minho answered. His face had turned pale in the strange light of the chamber. "According to these symbols, this being was chained here to stop something called the Void Hunger from destroying everything that exists. But who chained it here?" asked Boram. Minho studied more of the wall symbols. A civilization that lived here long ago. They are all gone now. The chains are failing because no one is left to maintain them. As if it had heard their conversation, the dragon's golden eyes suddenly opened. They focused on the small group of humans with an intelligence that was both ancient and completely alien. When it spoke, they heard its voice inside their minds rather than with their ears. So the young ones have found me at last. I had wondered if anyone would come before the end. The humans stepped back in surprise. None of them had expected the creature to be awake or able to communicate. "You can understand us?" asked Dr. Haywan. "I can understand all living minds," the dragon replied. Its mental voice was tired but patient. "I have been alone here for so long that even the company of young species brings me joy." "What is your name?" asked Minho. "I am called Veltar. I was once a guardian of the spaces between worlds. Now I am the last barrier between your galaxy and complete destruction." Yunji checked her medical scanner again. "Your life signs are very weak. How long have you been chained here?" 1,000 of your years, perhaps more. Time moves strangely in this place. The chains drain my life force to power the prison that holds back the void hunger." "What is the void hunger?" asked Dr. Haywan. The dragon's eyes grew dark with fear and sadness. "It is the opposite of everything that exists. Where there is matter, it brings emptiness. Where there is energy, it brings nothing. Where there is life, it brings absolute death. Why was it necessary to chain you here?" Boram wanted to know. "Because my people had the ability to exist in normal space and in the void between realities at the same time. We could fight the hunger in ways that other beings could not, but the cost of containing it has been terrible." Minho studied more of the wall writings. "The symbols say that your people are gone. What happened to them?" "They gave their lives to create this prison. Each of my kind who died added their power to the chains that bind me here. I am the last of my species, and when I die, the barrier will fail." "How long do you have left?" asked Yunji. Veltar was quiet for a long moment. "Days, perhaps weeks. The chains are breaking and I no longer have the strength to repair them. Soon the void hunger will sense that the way is open, and it will come to consume your galaxy." The humans looked at each other with growing horror. They had come here expecting to find some ancient artifact or maybe a dangerous prisoner. Instead, they had discovered that this dying creature was the only thing protecting all life in their part of the universe. "There must be something we can do," said Dr. Haywan. "Some way to help you or fix the chains. Your species is young," Veltar replied. "You have great potential, but you do not yet understand the forces involved here. The technology that created these chains is beyond anything your people have developed." "But we have to try," insisted Boram. "We cannot just watch you die knowing what will happen afterward." The dragon looked at them with something that might have been hope. "Perhaps there is a way. Your minds work differently than my people did. You see possibilities where we saw only limitations. If you are willing to learn, I will teach you what I know about the prison and the threat it contains." "We are willing," said Dr. Haywan without hesitation. "Then we must begin immediately," Veltar said. "The void hunger stirs in the deep spaces. It has not yet sensed that the barriers are failing, but soon it will begin to move toward your galaxy. When that happens, we will have very little time to prepare." As the dragon began to share its ancient knowledge with the human team, none of them realized they were about to learn secrets that would change not just their own lives, but the entire future of humanity among the stars. Captain Deho sat in the emergency meeting room aboard the Prosperity. The discovery that they had found a guardian instead of a prisoner changed everything. His crew looked tired and worried as they discussed what to do next. "We cannot just leave it there to die," Dr. Haywan said firmly. "If Minho's translations are correct, this creature has been protecting us from something terrible for 1,000 years. Chief Engineer Boram shook her head. "The chain system is very complex. It is not just holding the creature. The chains are connected to the entire asteroid. If we try to break them the wrong way, we could destroy everything, including the dragon. And if we do nothing," said Navigator Hyjin, "we will definitely lose it. The energy readings show the chains are breaking down very quickly. We have maybe a few days before the whole system fails." The dragon Veltar had been very patient with the humans as they tried to understand how the prison worked. Through long conversations with Minho, it had explained why it had been willing to sacrifice itself. "The void hunger is not just a monster or enemy," Veltar had told them. It is the opposite of existence itself. When it moves through space, stars go out forever. Planets disappear completely. Entire civilizations are erased from reality as if they never existed. But why did it have to be you? Dr. Haywan had asked through Minho's translations. Because my people could exist in normal space and in the void between realities at the same time. We could touch the hunger and fight it in ways other species could not. But the cost of holding it back has been enormous. Now the human team worked desperately to understand the chain mechanisms. They had very little time before the ancient systems failed completely. Their choices seemed impossible. Free Veltar, and risk letting the void hunger loose without its guardian. Leave the dragon chained and watch it die, knowing that would have the same terrible result. Boram had an idea during one of their late-night planning sessions. What if we do not break the chains? She suggested. What if we repair them instead? Make them stronger with our technology? The idea seemed crazy. Human technology was only a few hundred years old. They were trying to improve machines built by aliens who could manipulate space and time itself. But as they studied the failing systems more carefully, they began to see possibilities. Our quantum energy technology works on similar ideas to their containment systems, Boram explained. Her excitement was growing as she worked through the problem. We might not be able to copy their work exactly, but we could add our technology to make it stronger. When they presented this idea to Veltar, the dragon seemed surprised and hopeful. Your species is very young, the creature said, but there is something different about how you think. You look for solutions where my people only saw problems. Perhaps this is why you have come now, when all seems lost. The work began immediately. Boram and her engineering team started building quantum energy amplifiers that could connect to the alien chain systems. Dr. Haywan studied the ancient technology to understand how it worked. Minho continued translating the wall symbols to learn more about the original builders. But as they worked, their sensors detected something terrifying. Strange energy readings were coming from deep space. Stars in distant systems began to flicker and dim in ways that made no scientific sense. It is beginning to sense that the containment is weakening, Veltar explained when they showed it the readings. For 1,000 years, the chains have hidden this location from the hunger's awareness. But as they fail, it starts to notice the path to your galaxy again. How long do we have? Asked Dr. Haywan. The hunger moves between dimensions. Time means nothing to it. It could arrive in days or years. But once it begins moving toward us, nothing can stop it except a guardian willing to merge with the containment system forever. The humans understood what this meant. Veltar had been chained to this place for 1,000 years, but there had always been hope of freedom someday. What the dragon was describing now was much worse. It meant becoming part of the barrier itself with no possibility of ever being free. There has to be another way, Boram insisted. She worked even harder on her quantum amplifiers. These energy systems are showing real promise. If we can stabilize the existing chains while adding our technology as a bridge. But even as she spoke, alarms began ringing throughout the structure. The ancient prison was detecting something approaching through dimensional space. Their instruments showed it as a zone of absolute nothingness moving with purpose and intelligence. It comes, Veltar said. For the first time, the humans heard real fear in the dragon's mental voice. The void hunger has found us. Through the prison's sensors, they watched in horror as reality itself began to break apart at the edges of their solar system. Stars did not just go out. They stopped having ever existed at all. Space itself twisted and folded, creating holes in existence that hurt to look at directly. The gravity effects alone will destroy every planet in this system, reported Heejin. Her voice was tight with barely controlled panic. If that thing gets any closer, it will not, Veltar said with sudden determination. I will not allow another extinction event. Not when there is still hope for life to grow and flourish. The dragon began to glow with an inner light that grew brighter every moment. The chains that had bound it for so long started to vibrate with the same energy. But instead of draining Veltar's life force, they began to channel it in completely new patterns. What are you doing? Dr. Haywan asked urgently. What I should have done long ago, came the reply. I am choosing to become the barrier itself. But first I must teach your people what they need to know to carry on this work. Wait, said Boram desperately. Our quantum amplifiers are almost ready. If you can hold on just a little longer. There is no more time, Veltar replied. But your technology may be the key to a permanent solution. I will give you all the knowledge my people gathered about the hunger and how to fight it. Use it wisely. The dragon's transformation was beginning. Its body became more and more transparent as it started to merge with the containment systems. The chains themselves were changing, becoming something that was part technology, part living being, and part pure will made real. "We cannot let you sacrifice yourself," Minho protested. "There must be another way to solve this." "There is," Veltar said. Its mental voice now carried something that sounded like a smile. "But it will require your people to grow and learn and become something greater than they are now. The knowledge I am giving you is only the beginning. Use it to find a better way." As the transformation neared completion, the approaching void hunger suddenly stopped. The zone of nothingness that had been consuming its way through space-time hit the renewed barrier and found itself unable to continue. "How long will this hold?" asked Captain Deho. "Long enough," came Veltar's fading reply. "Long enough for humanity to decide what kind of species it wants to become. Long enough for you to choose whether you will be guardians or merely survivors." The dragon's final communication filled their minds with images of possible futures. They saw humanity spreading across the galaxy not as conquerors but as protectors. They saw new technologies that could push back the void hunger, not just from one galaxy but from all existence. They saw a universe where no one would ever again have to sacrifice themselves to protect others. "The choice," Veltar whispered, as its consciousness merged completely with the barrier, "is yours to make." 3 days after Veltar's sacrifice, the long-range sensors aboard the Prosperity began detecting strange readings from deep space. Navigator He-Jin stared at her screens with growing concern. Stars and distant systems were behaving in ways that made no scientific sense. "Captain," she called to Deho, "you need to see this. The gravitational patterns in the outer systems are completely wrong." Captain Deho hurried to her station. The sensor data showed star systems that had been stable for millions of years suddenly becoming unstable. But this was not normal stellar collapse. The stars were not exploding or burning out. They were simply disappearing. "It is responding to the weakening containment," came a familiar voice in their minds. Even though Veltar had merged with the barrier system, the dragon could still communicate with them. But its mental voice was different now, more distant and echoing. "What do you mean?" asked Dr. Haywan, who had been studying the alien knowledge that Veltar had shared with them. For 1,000 years the chains hid this location from the hunger's awareness. But as they failed, it began to sense the path to your galaxy once again. Now that I have renewed the barrier, it knows exactly where we are. The implications hit the human team like a physical blow. They had saved Veltar's life by merging the dragon with the containment system. But in doing so they had revealed their location to the cosmic threat they were trying to hide from. "How long do we have?" asked Minho. "The hunger moves between dimensions," Veltar explained. "Time has little meaning for such a being. It could arrive in your days or your years. But once it begins moving toward us, nothing can stop it except a guardian willing to become one with the barrier forever." Dr. Haywan felt a chill run down her spine. "But you already did that. You merged with the system to save us?" "What I did was temporary," the dragon replied sadly. "I stabilized the failing chains and renewed their power. But this solution will not last forever. Eventually, the hunger will find a way to break through, unless we find a permanent answer." Chief Engineer Boram had been working day and night on her quantum amplifier systems. "The technology we developed to support the chains is still functional. If we can find a way to distribute the load across multiple systems instead of relying on one guardian." "Explain this idea," Veltar requested. Boram pulled up her engineering diagrams on the main screen. "Instead of one being sacrificing themselves to hold the barrier, we could potentially create a network of connected systems. Multiple guardians sharing the burden while still maintaining their individual lives." The concept was revolutionary, but before they could explore it further, the ship's alarm systems began screaming warnings. Communications Officer Subin rushed to her station as emergency signals flooded in from across human space. "Captain, we are receiving distress calls from mining stations in the Outer Rim," she reported. "Something is happening to the Kepler system." The main viewing screen switched to show long-range telescope images from the affected area. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent with horror. The Kepler system, which had contained 4 planets and a stable yellow star, was gone. Not destroyed or damaged, but completely absent. There was nothing there but empty space that seemed darker than it should be. "That is impossible," whispered Boram. You cannot just erase an entire star system. The void hunger can, Veltar said grimly. What you are seeing is not destruction. It is the complete negation of existence. Those worlds, that star, and everything that ever lived there has been removed from reality itself. It is as if they never existed at all. More reports began coming in. The zone of nothingness was expanding, moving from system to system with terrifying purpose. Each place it touched was not just destroyed but erased, completely from the universe. The gravitational effects alone should be tearing apart nearby systems, observed Dr. Haywan. But the sensor readings show that space itself is adjusting as if those systems were never there. That is the true horror of the hunger, Veltar explained. It does not just consume matter and energy. It consumes the very concept of existence. Reality reshapes itself to fill the gaps, and soon no one remembers what was lost. Captain Deho made a difficult decision. Send emergency broadcast to all human colonies. Tell them to prepare for evacuation. We need to get as many people as possible away from the outer systems. Where can they go? Asked Hyejin. If this thing is heading for our entire galaxy, nowhere will be safe. Earth, Deho replied. Our home system has the strongest defenses and the largest population. If we are going to make a stand, it should be there. But even as he gave the orders, more devastating news arrived. The void hunger was not moving in a straight line toward their galaxy. It was systematically consuming every system in its path, growing stronger with each act of negation. It feeds on existence itself, Veltar confirmed. Every star, every planet, every living being it consumes makes it more powerful. By the time it reaches your core worlds, it will be unstoppable by conventional means. Boram worked frantically on her distributed Guardian network idea. If we can establish quantum entanglement links between multiple barrier points, we might be able to create a defense grid instead of relying on a single prison. The knowledge I gave you contains the specifications for such systems, Veltar said, but they require volunteers willing to link their consciousness with the barrier network. The process is dangerous and not always reversible. What do you mean not reversible? Asked Dr. Haywan. Some who attempt the consciousness bridge successfully merge with the network and retain their individual identity. Others become lost in the quantum connection and cannot find their way back to normal existence. The weight of this revelation settled over the human team. They were asking people to risk their very souls to save the galaxy. But as more reports came in of systems being erased from reality, they realized they had no choice. We need to return to Earth immediately, Captain Deho decided. The government and military leaders need to understand what we are facing. They need to know that humanity's survival depends on volunteers willing to become guardians. There is something else you must know, Veltar said urgently. The hunger is not just randomly consuming systems. It is following a specific pattern, targeting areas with the highest concentration of life and consciousness. Earth, with its billions of inhabitants, will be one of its primary goals. Navigator Hyejin calculated their travel time. At maximum speed, we can reach Earth in 6 weeks. But according to the hunger's current rate of approach, it will arrive in our solar system within 2 months. Then we have very little time to prepare, said Dr. Haywan. We need to train volunteers for the Guardian network, establish the quantum entanglement systems, and somehow convince the governments of Earth to cooperate in this defense. As the Prosperity began its desperate journey back to Earth, the crew carried with them knowledge that would either save humanity or doom them to the same fate as the countless civilizations that had already been erased from existence. Behind them, the void hunger continued its relentless advance, consuming reality itself as it moved inexorably toward the heart of human civilization. The ancient prison that had contained it for 1,000 years had become a beacon, guiding the cosmic destroyer directly to its next target. The real battle for the galaxy was about to begin. The emergency meeting at Earth's Global Defense Center was unlike anything in human history. Representatives from every nation sat around a massive table, while Captain Deho's team presented their findings. The room was filled with tension as world leaders struggled to understand the cosmic threat approaching their planet. You are asking us to believe that an invisible force is erasing entire star systems, said President Kim from the Eastern Federation, and that our only defense is to volunteer people for some kind of alien mind link. Dr. Haywan stood at the presentation screen showing images from the destroyed Kepler system. The evidence is undeniable. 12 star systems have vanished completely in the past month. The rate of destruction is increasing as the void hunger grows stronger. General Park from Earth's military command studied the tactical reports. Even if we accept this threat is real, how do we know this Guardian network will work? We are trusting technology we barely understand. Chief Engineer Boram activated her holographic displays showing the quantum entanglement systems. We have been testing the connection protocols with volunteers from our crew. The results show that human consciousness can successfully interface with the alien barrier technology. At what cost? Asked Dr. Lee, Earth's chief medical officer. According to your reports, some volunteers have been lost in the process. The room fell silent. This was the most difficult part of their proposal. The Guardian network required people to risk their minds and possibly their lives to protect everyone else. Minho stepped forward to explain what they had learned from Veltar. The dragon shared with us everything its civilization knew about fighting the void hunger. They tried individual sacrifice, but that only delayed the threat. Our approach of shared consciousness through quantum networks offers the first real hope of a permanent solution. How many volunteers would we need? Asked Chancellor Wong from the Pacific Alliance. Based on our calculations, Boram replied, a minimum of 50 Guardians distributed across key points around Earth's solar system. But more would be better. The network becomes stronger with each additional consciousness. The debate continued for hours. Some leaders argued that humanity should focus on evacuation instead of fighting an impossible enemy. Others wanted to try conventional weapons first. A few suggested surrendering and hoping the void hunger would spare them. Captain Deho listened to the arguments with growing frustration. We do not have time for endless discussion, he finally said. Every day we delay, the hunger consumes more systems and grows stronger. Soon it will be too powerful for any defense to stop. What exactly are you asking us to do? Demanded Prime Minister Singh from the Northern Territories. Dr. Haywan took a deep breath. We need to recruit volunteers from across human space, people willing to undergo consciousness expansion training and link their minds with the Guardian network. We need to establish quantum relay stations throughout our solar system, and we need to do all of this within 6 weeks. The scale of the task seemed impossible, training people to merge their consciousness with alien technology, building quantum systems that had never been tested on such a scale, coordinating the defense of an entire planet with volunteers who might not survive the process. There is something else, Minho added quietly. Veltar has offered to guide the first group of volunteers through the consciousness bridging process. The dragon's experience could help reduce the risks. This revelation changed the mood in the room. Having the ancient guardian personally train their volunteers made the plan seem more feasible. What does this Veltar want in return? Asked President Kim suspiciously. Nothing, Minho replied. The dragon has already given everything to protect our galaxy. It only wants to ensure that humanity can take over the guardianship role successfully. Over the next 3 days, the world leaders debated and argued. Meanwhile, the void hunger continued its approach, consuming 2 more star systems. The pressure to make a decision grew with each passing hour. Finally, Chancellor Wong called for a vote. All in favor of proceeding with the Guardian Network plan? The result was unanimous. Faced with the choice between certain extinction and a dangerous gamble, humanity chose to fight. Within hours, recruitment centers opened in every major city on Earth. The requirements were strict. Volunteers needed to be mentally stable, physically healthy, and willing to risk their consciousness for the greater good. The response was overwhelming. Dr. Sungmin, a quantum physicist from Seoul, was among the first to volunteer. I have studied consciousness and quantum mechanics my entire career, he said during his interview. If there is even a small chance this will work, I must try. Lieutenant G1 from Earth's Space Force also stepped forward. I took an oath to protect humanity. This is just a different kind of battlefield. Thousands of others followed. Scientists, soldiers, teachers, engineers, artists. People from every walk of life united by the understanding that their world needed guardians. The training program began immediately. Boram and her team worked around the clock to build consciousness interface chambers. Dr. Haywan established communication links with Veltar so the dragon could guide the training process. The first sessions were terrifying. Volunteers had to learn to expand their awareness beyond normal human limitations. They practiced existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously, Most importantly, they learned to maintain their individual identity while connecting to a larger network. Consciousness, it feels like drowning and flying at the same time, reported Dr. Sung Min after his first successful connection. But there is something beautiful about it too. You can sense the thoughts and emotions of others in the network. It is like becoming part of something much larger than yourself. Not everyone succeeded. About 30% of volunteers could not make the consciousness bridge without losing themselves in the process. These brave souls had to be disconnected before they were permanently lost. But those who did succeed became something new. They retained their human memories and personalities while gaining abilities that seemed impossible. They could perceive threats across multiple dimensions. They could manipulate quantum energy with their thoughts. Most importantly, they could work together as a unified defense network. The Guardians are ready, Boram reported to the Global Defense Center after 4 weeks of intensive training. We have 67 successful volunteers linked into the network. The quantum relay stations are online and functioning. And the void hunger? Asked General Park Navigator Hyojin, who had been monitoring the cosmic threats approach, gave them the final timeline. It will reach the outer edge of our solar system in 12 days. Once it arrives, we will have perhaps hours before it attempts to consume Earth. The die was cast. Humanity had chosen to become guardians of existence itself. Soon they would discover if their courage and innovation were enough to succeed, where ancient civilizations had failed. In the depths of space, Veltar felt the new Guardian network coming online. For the first time in 1,000 years, the dragon was no longer alone in its vigil. Whatever happened next, existence itself would not face the darkness without defenders. 6 months after the first Guardian volunteers began their training, Earth had transformed into something unrecognizable. The mining ship Prosperity had been converted into humanity's first deep space Guardian station. Scientists and engineers from every nation worked together in ways that would have been impossible before the cosmic threat united them. Dr. Hei-Wan now led a team of specialists studying the alien knowledge that Veltar had shared with them. The dragon's information contained secrets about the nature of reality itself. But understanding it required humans to completely rethink everything they knew about physics and consciousness. The mathematics are incredible, reported Chief Engineer Boram during the weekly briefing. Veltar's people had developed equations that describe how existence and nothingness interact at the most basic level. But what makes it even more amazing is how our human theories fit together with their knowledge. Captain Deho, who now served as military coordinator for the Guardian project, asked the question everyone wanted answered. Any progress on finding alternatives to the sacrifice approach? Boram smiled for the first time in weeks. Actually, yes. We think we have discovered a way to create a distributed defense network. Instead of one Guardian giving up their life to hold the barrier, we can use multiple volunteer consciousnesses connected through quantum links. The idea was revolutionary. Rather than requiring one person to sacrifice everything, the new system would allow many individuals to share the burden of protecting reality while keeping their normal lives and identities. The key discovery came from studying how Veltar merged with the containment system, explained Dr. Hei-Wan. The dragon did not just give up its life. It transformed its consciousness into something that could exist in normal space and in the void between dimensions at the same time. We believe humans can achieve a similar state without the permanent change. Navigator Hyojin, who had been tracking the movements of the void hunger, added her findings. The entity appears to be testing our defenses. It keeps probing the barrier around the alien prison, trying to understand what has changed, but it is also learning. We must assume it will eventually develop ways to counter any system we create. Then we need to be ready to change our defenses as it adapts, responded Minho, who had become the primary expert on communicating with non-human consciousness. Veltar gave us more than just technical information. The dragon taught us how to think beyond the limitations that trapped its own people. The work continued day and night across multiple space stations. Human volunteers learned to interface with technology that operated according to principles their species had never imagined. The process was dangerous and sometimes failed, but gradually a new type of human guardian began to emerge. These enhanced individuals could perceive reality from multiple dimensional viewpoints at once. They could communicate directly with the quantum foundation of space and time. Most importantly, they could sense the movements and intentions of the void hunger across vast distances. Dr. Sungmin had been one of the first successful Guardian trainees. During a consciousness expansion session, he tried to describe the experience to his colleagues. It is not like becoming something different. It is like discovering abilities that were always inside us but hidden. We can feel the structure of reality itself and understand how to protect it. Lieutenant Ji-won, the military volunteer, had developed the ability to coordinate defensive actions across multiple star systems simultaneously. When I connect to the Guardian network, I can sense threats that are still light years away. It gives us time to prepare responses before the danger arrives. The training process had been refined over months of experimentation. Volunteers no longer risked losing themselves permanently in the quantum connections. The new techniques allowed people to expand their consciousness while maintaining their individual personalities and memories. We have successfully trained 137 Guardians, Boram reported to the Global Defense Council. The quantum relay network now covers our entire solar system. More importantly, we have established contact with Veltar through the enhanced communication systems. The Dragon's presence in the network had become a source of hope and guidance for the human Guardians. Though Veltar remained merged with the original containment barrier, its consciousness could now interact with the distributed defense system. The ancient Guardians are no longer alone. Veltar communicated during one of the network sessions. For the first time in 1,000 years, there are others who can share the burden of protecting existence itself. What happens when the void hunger finally reaches our galaxy? Asked Dr. Haewon through the quantum link. Your distributed network offers something my people never achieved, Veltar replied. We always thought in terms of individual sacrifice. You have created a system where many can work together without losing themselves. This may be the key to not just stopping the hunger, but pushing it back permanently. The implications were staggering. Instead of merely containing the cosmic threat, humanity might actually be able to defeat it. But this would require the Guardian network to function perfectly under conditions no one could fully predict. There is something else, Veltar continued. The knowledge I shared with you contains information about other threats waiting in the deep spaces between galaxies. The void hunger was only the first challenge. There are ancient forces that have slept since the universe began, but which will awaken if they sense weakness in our defenses. Dr. Haewon felt both excitement and fear at this revelation. Are you saying there are more entities like the hunger? Not exactly like it, but equally dangerous in different ways. Some seek to twist reality instead of destroying it. Others try to replace all consciousness with their own alien thoughts. The universe contains many perils that most civilizations never discover because they do not survive long enough. The Guardian trainees absorbed this information with determination rather than despair. They had already committed themselves to protecting not just Earth or humanity, but all existence. Learning about additional threats only strengthened their resolve. We will be ready, declared Lieutenant Ji-won, speaking for all the Guardians. Whatever comes, we will face it together. As the Enhanced Defense Network prepared for its first real test, reports began arriving from across the galaxy. Areas where the void hunger had previously consumed entire star systems were showing signs of recovery. Reality itself seemed to be healing from the damage that had been done. The distributed network is not just defensive, observed Boram with amazement. It appears to be actively repairing the universe. Stars that were erased from existence are beginning to return. Humanity had not just become guardians of reality, they had become healers of the cosmos itself, working to restore what had been lost and protect what remained. The young species that had barely learned to travel between planets was now taking responsibility for the safety of all existence. And in the quantum links that connected them all, Veltar felt something it had not experienced in centuries. Hope for a future where Guardians would not need to sacrifice everything to protect the universe they loved. 10 years had passed since humanity first discovered Veltar chained in the ancient prison. The universe looked very different now. Humans had spread across 3 star systems, building Guardian stations and training facilities on dozens of worlds. The old mining ship Prosperity had grown into a massive complex called Veltar Station, serving as both a memorial to the dragon's sacrifice and the center for ongoing research into protecting reality itself. Dr. Haewon, now Director of Universal Studies, stood in the central memorial chamber where Veltar's consciousness still lived within the barrier network. Though the dragon could no longer speak directly like before, its presence could be felt by anyone trained in dimensional awareness. The chamber had become a place of pilgrimage for guardians from across human space. The new defense network is ready for the final test, reported Chief Guardian Tae-young, one of the first humans to successfully merge with the barrier systems without losing his individual identity. We have 237 volunteer guardians positioned across the network, with quantum connections established and holding steady. This would be the moment that determined whether humanity's approach could truly replace the need for individual sacrifice. If successful, it would free Veltar from its eternal watch while keeping the protection against cosmic threats. If it failed, the consequences could destroy everything they had worked to build. Guardian teams report ready status at all positions, announced Coordinator Sora from the command center. Quantum field generators are running smoothly, consciousness bridging systems are active, and dimensional anchor points are locked in place. Dr. Haewon nodded to her team. Begin the transfer sequence. What happened next was something completely new in the history of the universe. 237 human minds reached out across space and time, connecting with each other and with the alien technology to create a form of collective consciousness that had never existed before. The process was unlike anything they had trained for. Instead of individual minds struggling alone against cosmic forces, the network created a shared intelligence that could perceive and respond to threats across entire galaxies. Each guardian kept their personal identity while contributing to a greater awareness that spanned multiple dimensions. Transfer holding steady, reported Tae-young, his voice carrying strange harmonics that suggested he was speaking from several different viewpoints at once. Void hunger containment is stable, beginning consciousness integration with the existing barrier systems. For one terrifying moment, warning alarms sounded throughout the station as the ancient systems fought against the new configuration. The void hunger, sensing the change in its prison, pressed against the weakening barriers with desperate intensity. Then everything suddenly clicked into perfect harmony. The new network did not just hold the void hunger back. It began to actively push the cosmic threat away from normal reality. The zone of nothingness that had lurked at the edges of space for thousands of years found itself being compressed, contained, and gradually forced into dimensional exile, where it could no longer threaten any form of existence. Veltar is responding, announced Minho, who had kept his role as the primary consciousness interface specialist. The dragon's awareness is changing. It is connecting with our network but also becoming free to exist independently again. Through the quantum links, they felt Veltar's presence awakening from its 1,000-year watch duty. The dragon's consciousness, no longer bound to the barrier systems, began to appear in ways that human senses could barely understand. It existed simultaneously in the memorial chamber, distributed across the Guardian network, and in dimensional spaces that stretched beyond normal perception. "My young guardians," came Veltar's voice, clearer and stronger than it had ever been during their first meetings. "You have accomplished something my people believed was impossible. You have found a way to share the burden of protection without losing your individual selves." The dragon's physical form began to appear in the chamber, but not as the chained prisoner they had first discovered. This was Veltar restored to full power and freedom. Its scales shimmered with perfect health, its eyes bright with intelligence and something that could only be called joy. "What happens now?" asked Dr. Haewon. "Now," replied Veltar, its mental voice carrying feelings of hope and excitement, "we begin the real work. The void hunger was only the first challenge. There are other ancient threats waiting in the deep spaces between galaxies, cosmic forces that have slept since the universe began. But with your network approach combined with my people's knowledge, we finally have the tools to not just defend against these dangers, but to heal the damage they have already caused." As humanity's Guardian network settled into its new role, reports began arriving from across the known universe. Dead zones where the void hunger had previously consumed reality were showing signs of restoration. Stars that had been thought lost forever were beginning to shine again. Life itself was returning to places where it had been completely erased from existence. The human guardians had become more than just protectors. They had become healers of reality itself, working to restore the universe to its full potential and beauty. Their network could reach into the damaged areas of space-time and slowly repair what had been broken. "Look at this," said Boram, now chief engineer of the Guardian network, as she displayed readings from the outer galaxy regions. "The quantum signatures show that entire civilizations are being restored. Not just their planets and stars, but their histories and cultures too. It is as if the universe is remembering what was lost and bringing it back. Captain Deho, who had become the military coordinator for all Guardian operations, studied the tactical implications. This means we are not just preventing future attacks, we are undoing the damage from past ones. How is that possible? Time works differently when you exist in multiple dimensions, explained Veltar. The Guardian network operates outside normal temporal flow. You can reach backward to repair what was destroyed and forward to prevent what has not yet happened. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just learned to protect the universe. They had become its restoration team, capable of healing wounds that stretched back millions of years. There is something else, Veltar continued. My people left other prisons scattered across the universe containing different types of cosmic threats. Most of these facilities are failing after eons without maintenance. Your network could free the remaining Guardians while taking over their protective duties. Dr. Haywan realized what this meant. There are others like you still chained in ancient prisons? Dozens of them. My species sacrificed themselves one by one to contain various threats to existence. With your distributed approach, we can free them all while maintaining the protection they provided. Over the following months, the human Guardian network expanded beyond anything they had originally imagined. They located and liberated ancient Guardians from across the universe, each one bringing new knowledge and abilities to the collective defense system. The Dragon Guardians, as they came to be known, worked together to not just protect reality but to actively improve it. They restored lost civilizations, healed damaged planets, and prevented cosmic disasters before they could occur. At the center of it all, Veltar flew free once more, no longer bound by chains of necessity but connected by bonds of friendship and shared purpose, with the young species that had chosen to become protectors of existence itself. The ancient prophecies of Veltar's people had spoken of a time when Guardians would no longer need to sacrifice themselves to protect the universe. They had simply never imagined that the solution would come from a species barely old enough to reach the stars, bringing with them new ways of thinking that transformed limitation into possibility. Humanity had found its true calling among the cosmos, not as conquerors seeking to dominate, but as guardians ensuring that the light of existence would never again face the darkness alone.